Ken Trahan along with Lenny Vangilder. It's our first NBC Bank special edition weekday update because of a special move made by the New Orleans Saints on the first day of free agency. They jumped right in, and they jumped in the biggest way ever, trading maybe their biggest commodity given his productivity, salary, and age. Jimmy Graham goes to the Seattle Seahawks in return for Pro Bowl center Max Unger and several draft picks, it's been reported. We expect that one will be a number one. There'll be some others to go along with that. So, Lenny, it's one of those deals where you look at it initially and there's shock because it's Jimmy Graham and they just paid him an enormous amount of money last year. And he hasn't even come into his prime yet. Some feel like he's still learning the game as good as he is. So, after the shock wore off, where did you end up with this?
Well, Jimmy Graham's 28 years old. We think of him as young. 28 is, probably midpoint, even towards the back end of a career for a receiver, and especially a tight end. And he has been, a guy who he struggled with injuries last year. And clearly when he did get hurt, when I think it was in week 6, he wasn't the same player the rest of the year. And you have to wonder as well, what we've seen over the last couple of years is things continue to evolve. There are, I don't want to call Jimmy Graham a gimmick, but there are things when things are done differently in this league, a lot of times it takes defenses a little while to catch up, and then eventually they do catch up. And I think a little bit of that is what you've seen happen here over the last couple of years. I think the book is out there on how to solve Jimmy Graham as a receiver, as a combination tight end wide receiver. And I don't want to say he's expendable as a result of that, but I think if you can get something in return, like a Pro Bowl center and a first-round draft pick, maybe among other things, that's a pretty strong return.
And, of course, it's not over with. The Saints clearly have some other things in mind. They might stand pat and simply keep their 2 number 1 picks. Keep in mind they have a number 2 as well. Or, as we suspect, this might be just the first part of the moves that they make. The chess game continues. You make move number 1 so that you can set up the next move. And obviously that might be what's going on here. So if you want to judge it at face value, go right ahead. But I tend to believe that there's more to come.
There is. And remember this. It is March the 10th. This is the first day of the league year. Literally, we're an hour into it at this point. The draft is still 7 weeks away. The regular season doesn't start for 6 months yet, okay? This is the players who are there right now are not going to be necessarily the players you're going to see on the field come the Sunday after Labor Day when the Saints open the season. So a lot of other things can still happen. If you feel like you've got resources in your hand that allow you to get something good in return, then perhaps you make that trade.
Well, it's obvious that the Saints felt that Max Unger was a very good piece and an essential piece. It's obvious they felt like Jonathan Goodwin just doesn't have anything left in the tank. And it's obvious they didn't feel like Tim Lolito was your center of the future to be able to make this move. One thing that comes out of this, they signed Mark Ingram to a 4-year deal, and they have an Armstead already there. You look at the pieces in place, it looks to me like they're making even more of a commitment to run the football.
No question about it. That is clearly what the MO perhaps of this 2015 Saints is starting to shape up like. And when this team performed at its best this year, it really, you can go back through the Sean Payton era, it's been because of a solid running game. And you have to be able to start with running the football and shoring up the interior of that line with Unger. Let's see what happens. I mean, you've got 2 big-ticket guards out there. Does a move get made with one of those guys, whether it's a restructure or a release or whatever, or a trade, whatever it might be, perhaps. But, like I said, it's March 10th. This is the first move of this game of chess, if you will. The regular season does not start for 6 months. There's a long way to go. But you're right. The shock is because really no one saw this one coming. Is the first thing that you have in terms of a reaction.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and obviously this is an interesting move, and my last comment will be that I think that this is intriguing considering you have Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton who have now been together for a decade, basically, and they know they're not good enough. They know that 7-9 was real. They know that 7-9 in a bad division was real. And they know that they simply aren't good enough to move on with what they had and expect to be a real contender next year. So 10 years in, if you will, they're kicking the tires, and I think that's a pretty good thing.
It is, and I'll leave you with one thought, your opinion on this. As someone who has a great respect and appreciation of the history of this team, where does this trade rank among the trades that we have seen in the nearly 50 years of this franchise?
Well, it's a pretty interesting point because when you look at the most significant trades the Saints have ever made, certainly you look at Archie Manning for Leon Gray, which obviously didn't benefit the Saints in any great way. But you look at the two lopsided trades, the one trade, of course, that the Saints were involved in that brought Steve Walsh here, that was a lopsided trade. And then, of course, the one that they traded Ricky Williams, for Ricky Williams, the rights to get him, was another massive move on their part that obviously did not pan out. So I think this, to me, might be the most significant, ultimately, of all the trades they made, and hopefully the most significant positive trade they've made.
Yeah, and you're looking at an all-pro player going one direction, an all-pro player coming back in the other direction. It's not like you didn't get anything here for Graham. I think the shock is here is one of probably the 2 or 3 faces of your franchise that has now been jettisoned to Seattle. Somebody you may have to contend with to get back to the Super Bowl if that is indeed what this team is capable of doing. You may have to deal with trying to stop Jimmy Graham to get back to a Super Bowl. But remember, you do get an all-pro player in Max Unger in return.
Very intriguing, and we look forward to seeing how it manifests itself from here. That's our First NBC Bank weekday review, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 35 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana and the Florida Panhandle. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNOLA.com. All right, Lenny, thanks for the midweek visit. We'll do it again this weekend.
Yeah, see you later this week.
All right, thanks, Lenny. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great week, and God bless you.